Hi all, and welcome to Miss Helm's Learning Corner by Anne Helm. Today we will be looking at the backward framework. What is it, how it works, the advantages and disadvantages, Bloom's taxonomy. What is it, how it works, the advantages and disadvantages, incorporating both frameworks into a lesson, which in this case will be a lesson plan, and I will also have the references available as well. So come along and join me as we learn about the UBD, which is Understanding by Design, which was created by Wiggins and McTighe, which incorporates the backwards design model. This will focus on three areas of curriculum, assessment, and instruction, which are the base foundations of the backward framework that Wiggins and McTighe created. From our reading this week, the two components that made up the UBD focuses on the planning process, which includes curriculum, assessment, and instruction, and also the second one, which is designing the curriculum backwards. When creating curriculum and designing it using the backward design framework, three steps must be included, which is identify the desired results, evaluation and assessment, planning for experiences learning that students can use within and outside of the classroom without the teacher present. So let's start with step one. Step one is the desired outcome. How can this be a long-term skill that students learn that also is meaningful learning within their capabilities of cognitive understanding and skills used to learn the outcome that you want to achieve? And also having this outcome, it must be used throughout steps 2 and 3. Creating step 1, which is also known as the transfer of learning stage. The knowing what your desired outcome is, two other questions should be asked, such as what should students be able to know, understand, and do? And will this outcome meet the needs of all learners, not just some of my learners that I have and I serve? After achieving our desired outcome, let's look at stage 2. Stage 2 involves assessment and evaluation. This is anything that is done through a test, a quiz, or a presentation. As stage 2 focuses on the assessment and evidence and within determining what to do and how to achieve the desired results, we also need to look at how will students perform and how are we going to evaluate their performance within a fair and consistent way due to the students' learning abilities in which they learn. Assessing the ways that students learn, there are two different types of assessments, which is performance task and evidence. The performance tasks lets the learners use and apply real-world situations within what they're doing for the teacher to better assess and monitor growth and learning through the objective that you want to obtain, which was defined in step 1. The key takeaway from step 2 is knowing the different types of assessments and resources to use to maintain and track student understanding for them to be able to perform while keeping in line with the main goal. And let's move on to our last step, which is step 3, when creating and designing our instructional material. Step 3 has us create our lesson through experiences. So how could I incorporate an experience for students to learn the lesson and a goal that is being achieved? An example of this could be role play, an art project, a Jeopardy, or even setting up a class like a restaurant. So for in my case, where students are learning how to apply and use fractions, I would set up my classroom as a bakery and have students work on recognizing different pieces of slices of cake or even pies in this case to recognize on how fractions are used and where they are used. The biggest takeaway in step 3 is that when creating the activities, go back and use the 3 goals that are used when creating your desired outcome in step 1, which is design and create activities that will help enhance student activities to use real world learning problem and solve. To make this even happen, we have to remember to support stage 1, which is transfer the meaning and making accusations, help to keep in line with the 3 goals addressed when we plan on how students will transfer what they've learned into the process of skills or tasks performed to acquire the knowledge within the desired result that you want your students to achieve. And if you use these steps, these 3 steps from stage 1 to stage 3, your desired outcome can be achievable. So what are the advantages of the backwards design model? Well, an advantage is that it can be used online in classroom. It has a structured program of looking at how learning and the objectives chosen will meet students' needs with the end goal at mind first. And the 3 steps all build upon one another, which focuses on the student's level of understanding, allowing them to make and create opportunities for students to achieve the learning goals that the teacher or teachers have set forth. So the disadvantage of the backwards design model could be challenging if you don't know how to build off of your result, which was established in step 1, which is your objective. And then also it takes time and effort in planning the lesson that you want students to be able to do outside of your classroom to gain new skills and knowledge. So that does take time. Now, let's move on and look at Bloom's taxonomy and how that works. So, what is Bloom's taxonomy? Bloom's taxonomy was created in 1959 by Benjamin Bloom and Max L. Elkhart, Edward First, Walter Hill, and David Cross, who published a framework that categorizes educational goals, which is taxonomy of educational objectives. With Bloom's taxonomy being originated in 1956, it was revised in 2001, and in this presentation, I will be focusing on the revised version of Bloom's taxonomy. Here's an example of Bloom's taxonomy 2001 version. In the first one, we have remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. This is used within the learning process of students to be able to obtain the objective that the teacher has set forth throughout the learning process, so students are able to cognitively process and understand the material being taught, presented, and applied within real-world situations. Let's examine the 6 different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Remembering, recalling, and recognizing are the foundations to learning, which is level 1 of Bloom's taxonomy. Examples include such as who, what, when, where, why, and how. Questions applied within the content material, an objective that you as a teacher would like to achieve. Level 2, which is understand. In applying level 2 of Bloom's taxonomy, an example of this would be having students to compare or explain the reason and idea of fractions, and or also I could ask them how do we use fractions or why do we use fractions? And the reason is because they are explaining the reasoning behind this, which now brings us to level 3, which is apply. Here, level 3 of Bloom's taxonomy, an example such as making cookies that I discussed about in the backwards design. Here, students draw, make, or illustrate, or even execute a design plan on how they will make the cookies. Level 4 of Bloom's taxonomy is analyze. As through the cognitive process of analyze, students are differentiating, organizing, examining, classifying fractions, and listing the parts that make up a fraction. As the progress of learning builds upon one another, it is time for the students to evaluate, which is level 5 of Bloom's taxonomy. An example of how students can use level 5 evaluate is having students evaluate one another's work within the planning, predicting, or writing what would happen if you misread a fraction when cooking cookies. For cookies to even appear in class, we now move on to level 6, the top level of Bloom's taxonomy, which is to create. Here, the students will create cookies by designing, planning, and generating their own recipes and making cookies within the classroom. Now we have an understanding of the 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive learning process. So why is this all important? Well, it helps us create a plan. It helps us evaluate how things are like. It analyzes how things are different. It also guides us in how we can apply the main points and ideas taught. It can help us understand and formulate and interpret topics of students' understanding of cognitive ability. And also, it helps us to remember and recall facts about a lesson that was taught or discussed within and outside of the classroom. Overall, Bloom's taxonomy provides a level of cognitive process which builds upon one another, providing students to reach the end goal of what they are learning to be used in and out of the class. Now you're wondering, how can both of these frameworks, the backwards design framework and Bloom's taxonomy, both be applied? Here in my math, I will be doing fractions. So first I will need to examine where my students are at. Then I will need to measure their cognitive ability, their assessment and achievements work that they have completed in order to gauge and guide the students' interest of content material to reach their specific needs of learning. So thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. Here are my references provided.